Hello my internet friends, my name is Soul, and I hope everyone watching had a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year, and I wanted to celebrate the season by doing my own little festive holiday cheer video, and that is to look back on 2023. Every year I usually do like my top 10 movies for 2023, and this year it wasn't a wonderful year for movies. There's only like a few I was really passionate about. I felt weird about doing a top 10 movies where there's only like 4 that I like really care about. So I thought instead, there's all these movies I haven't talked about, all these movies I haven't reviewed yet. So I wanted to do like a 12 days of Christmas special where each day I review a different movie from 2023, only for some reason it's in January. It's because I'm late, because it's already Christmas. So the January 2024 edition of 12 Days of Christmas. And like I said, each day we're going to review a different movie from the year 2023, or if you're watching this on the main channel, I'm just going to block them all together for one super video so I don't clog everyone's sub feed. But if you're watching this on the second channel, I'll be seeing you guys every single day. And off the bat, I wanted to review a movie I actually watched today, and it happened to also be my worst movie of 2023, which is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. So this film was like a fever dream to me. I remember seeing a trailer for it, and then I forgot about it. Then it went into theaters. This godforsaken movie got a theater run. I forgot about it then. And then until this morning when I saw it on streaming services, and I was like, oh yeah, that existed. And maybe sometimes reviewers, we just want to bully something. You want to hate watch something. I did go into it with an open mind. I wasn't, specifically looking to clown on it. But I knew what was coming, and I was correct. It was the worst movie of the year by far. So if you haven't gone into a lore background for this movie, I'll break it down for you real quick. Winnie the Pooh, beloved childhood classic character. Everybody loves Winnie the Pooh. I love Winnie the Pooh. He's a great guy. You ever play Kingdom Hearts? He'd run around the Winnie the Pooh level? I did. It was awesome. And he went into public domain, so now every single degenerate out there can make their own Winnie the Pooh property, as long as they only take from the original childhood classic story. They don't go too much into the Disney stuff. It's fair game, and thus this movie exists. And let's say you want to make your own spin on a property that already exists. Maybe the laziest way you could do that is just to make it a slasher film. Take those childhood characters, just make them into bad costumes, and make them murderers, and you have a slasher film. And I'm not saying this couldn't work. You could make like a funny, weird parody movie, something campy or goofy. That could have worked, but it probably would have taken like actual effort and care, which this movie does not have. And I'll go into my own little childhood well for a moment. I remember being a kid, and my grandmother, she loved Winnie the Pooh, and I remember when I'm still like excited that Tigger is on the screen and jumping around and just stumbling around. I remember being that little watching Winnie the Pooh at my grandmother's house. I have cried for maybe 2 movies ever, and one of them was the Christopher Robin movie. That's how deep my childhood love for Winnie the Pooh goes. That being said, I bring that up because this movie easily could have tapped into some childhood trauma stuff. If they wanted to ruin my childhood, they had it right in their fingertips, and they didn't do a goddamn thing with that, because never at any point in this movie does anything happening on screen remind you of Winnie the Pooh. It's a fucking guy in a mask, and at no point in the movie does it feel like anything other than that. If they just stop pretending this isn't some dude in a mask, if they finally were just like, yeah, I'm just a fucking creepy guy obsessed with a childhood story, that would have made for a better movie than us pretending that Winnie the Pooh is like a half bear thing that got abandoned and became a murderer for some reason. Because if you're going to use this franchise, you're going to use these characters, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet at least, that's the only characters they use, other than like a shitty little intro. That is the only thing they take from this property are names and similar looking faces, and they do nothing with it. So if that's all you're gonna do, don't put that in your title, don't use these characters' names. You are doing nothing with this property. And then the rest of the cast is just lifeless slaughter with no personality. You are introduced to like almost a dozen characters within the first 20-30 minutes. You're not going to remember any of them. You know they're going to die. They are not going to play with that idea. They're not going to do anything. They're all just going to die one by one. It's a bunch of girls going on a girl trip, and at one point they don't even seem to notice that there's like 2 or 3 of them missing. These characters are constantly just being dumb and constantly don't seem to see things that are like 2 feet away. There could be a giant teddy bear with a knife coming at them and they won't notice until they're a foot away from them, which again is something that bothers me in horror films, but those movies at least will have like cool characters or ideas, and maybe they don't take themselves so seriously. I think that's like the biggest factor of this movie. If they were just trying to have a fun time, just making a silly dumb movie, collecting the paycheck, that would have been fine. It wouldn't have been a complete pile of shit like this movie became. And the bad thing is, I get excited when things like this become public domain. I love reimagining of old stories. I can't wait for Mickey Mouse to be doing crazy ass shit, but I don't want it to turn into generic stories that exist for the sake of existing, because there's plenty of childhood stories, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, stories that went on to reinvent themselves and tell unique spins while also offering new ideas. And this movie does not even try to do that. I don't want things to become public domain just so they can get abused for a paycheck. I want them to enter the internet remixing age and turn into something cool and unique. But that movie doesn't exist for this purpose. This movie exists because it simply can. And there are plenty of movies that exist for a paycheck that I still end up loving because there's still talent behind it. There's still some form of love in there, but this film doesn't have that. And that is why it is easily my worst movie of 2023. I'm going to give this one a low 2 out of 10. The only reason I don't give this movie a 1 is because I have seen plenty of movies that are a 1, which are just shambles. At least it is somewhat structured and there are camera angles, like there's people acting, I suppose you could say. So in some form, it has something, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. And that was the first review that I'm going to be doing for these 12 days of film, the 12 days of 2023. I'm still working on a title. But anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and until next time, with that, I leave you. Hello everyone and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. I'm reviewing a different movie from 2023 every single day, and today I'm talking about Knock at the Cabin, the latest film by the one and the only M. Night Shyamalan. The man who's had a career of many ups and downs. First he was the great M. Night Shyamalan, the guy who made Signs, The Sixth Sense, The Village, Top of the World, and then he made Avatar, The Happening, After Earth, and then he kind of came back with Split, and now we've reached the magic place where we don't know what this man is capable of anymore. We have no idea the quality of this man's films. It's just hitting a dartboard at this point, and that's exactly what happens with Knock at the Cabin. I will say this film kind of disappointed me. I actually was pretty excited. I like the idea of Batista leading a cult with Ron Weasley as his boy, and them going into this house like the strangers and forcing them to decide between killing themselves or the entire world ends. That seemed like an interesting premise. But a film like this, you know, one set, one location, can only work if it's written really well. And if you know anything about M. Night Shyamalan, he's not a great writer. But if there's one thing that did save this movie, it is the cast. Again, my boy Dave Bautista slamming Undertaker around, Drax, he can do it all, and he can carry this film if he needs to. Like I said, Ron Weasley at his helm. I'm sorry that I only know that guy for being Ron Weasley, but that's your curse, man. There's worse ones you could have. And everyone else was, for the most part, serviceable. Some were pretty good. The child actor was not very good. For whatever reason, M. Night Shyamalan loves filming kids. I know that sounds weird, but he loves putting film... How do I phrase this? M. Night Shyamalan loves casting kids in his movies because he thinks kids offer that, like, more genuine reaction to things. They're more lifelike and real. And shout out to like Haley Joel Osment. He's had some talented kids on his set, but this was not one of them. And I don't even know if it's this kid's fault or most of the kids he puts in his movies' fault, because he just has scripts that I swear to God just say act stoically and don't say anything while the camera is like right up in your face. There's only so many performers who are going to get a good performance out of his movies because they're handicapped. Movies like Signs, The Lady at the Water, The Happening, they throw in these weird, quirky characters, but doesn't give them anything to do other than acting stoic. And it doesn't help that with this film, we're not like introduced to these characters. They're not like getting into the car and going on the trip. We aren't introduced to the cult members as they assemble their Avengers team. Instead, we immediately, it's just Dave Bautista already walking up on the house. The little girl's playing outside. He's ready. Like, we just jump into it. There's not time to really care about these characters. They're already fighting for their lives by the time we know their names. And the idea of this film is that this family has to choose each other or face the end of the world, but we're not really sure if the end of the world is actually happening. And we learn this via things that are happening on the TV, and they don't know if it's actually happening or if these people faked it. And you're in a lose-lose scenario. Either it actually is happening, and, you know, that's the answer. It's not a super interesting conclusion. Or it's not happening, and these are, like, super culty people. And you're just setting up two lanes that this movie can go down. Either they're lying, or they're not lying. And that's what we focus on for like the whole movie, and you're never satisfied because it's just like, oh, I guess they weren't lying, or I guess they were. By the end, this is a slight spoiler, but you know, a lot of these reviews I'm doing for the 12 days are spoilery. So basically it is revealed to us that these four chosen ones, they are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and they spoon feed that idea to you if you couldn't pick it up already. Like right when you're trying to, you kind of piece it together, they're just like, oh, here you go. And I swear to God, I've seen like trailers where they talk about that. You don't have fucking cool ideas and then you make it like practically written on the front of their shirt. If there's one thing this movie does, it deflates on itself. You don't really care about the end of the world because it's something that's happening in the background. It doesn't feel like there's any consequence to it, and you don't get a satisfactory conclusion with this family. All the other characters are basically set up to die like at dominoes, and they do. So it's not like you get a big twist like a lot of his movies do. It just happens very by the numbers, and by the end, it breaks its own rules because they establish right away that, oh, the entire family has to decide who dies between the three of them, and then the little girl is just like not included at all. So it's like, okay, so now that the entire cast is dead, the end of the world happened, and we barely got to see it, what is there left to care about? That's what I mean when this film deflates on itself. It's one of those movies that, as it's happening, you don't think it's that bad. I honestly thought I was going to give it an 8 out of 10 at one point, and then a 7, and then it just, again, deflates, and you're like, oh, that was probably one of the worst things I watched this year. You remember what I said earlier about M. Night Shyamalan's movies just being a dartboard in terms of quality? It could land anywhere. It landed on a solid 6 out of 10. It's not a film that I despised as I was watching it. It's not a film I have much good things to say about it either, but I will say I don't regret watching it either. I kind of feel bad, because like, I wanted M. Night Shyamalan to get like that little comeback. I want him to, you know, flourish, and because M. Night Shyamalan was like the comeback guy for a little bit, and he was just trying to make all these little films, and he's finally given like a bigger film, and it's not very good. But that's about all I got for this one. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next film. Thank you for watching, and until next time, with that, I leave. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. I'm reviewing a different movie from the year 2023 each day, and today I'm talking about Haunted Mansion, not The Haunted Mansion. We just cut that "the" out. We got a completely different film. I don't know if you guys noticed yet, I'm trying to do something different with the color, or make little visual changes each review, and I didn't know which one else to do black and white for, so hey. So my wife and I actually rewatched the original Haunted Mansion, prepping for this movie. Imagine prepping for Haunted Mansion, but that's exactly what I did because I hadn't seen the original movie in a while. I had since gone to the Disney park ride. I very much enjoyed the Disney park ride. I had small little child neuron memories of the original movie, but when I went back to rewatch it, as much as I love Eddie Murphy, as much as there was like a little childhood spark in that film, I just thought it was alright. If I have any nostalgia for this property, it's because of the ride. That being said, I do know people love or hate that original Eddie Murphy movie, but I don't have like a strong opinion either way. That being said, I think I like this one more. But let me break it down. Let me paint the picture here. So Disney, they will turn every rock if it means there's potentially a penny underneath it. And thus they are gonna break out the old Haunted Mansion franchise. They've had success with Pirates of the Caribbean and turning their rides into movies in the past. That being said, this is never gonna touch Pirates of the Caribbean. That is a once in a lifetime. I love Pirates of the Caribbean. But I think just by being a good movie, this already exceeds my expectations. And this film really exists also just to bloat up Disney Plus. It's just more content on the assembly line for Disney. That being said, they've made plenty of films like that in the past that I've ended up really liking. And the best way to get off of that line is to distinct yourself. For instance, this film is PG-13. Which it did not need to be, but I'm happy it did, and it addresses some darker themes. The main guy from this film is Darius from Atlanta. I love that dude. He is going through a lot of trauma. He has like terrible social anxiety. It actually talks about like actual mature themes in this movie. It doesn't go deep into it. I don't expect it to, but it feels much more like it's in the real world than the last movie, which was much more campy. I'm not saying this movie isn't campy because the cast they got here do a great job of doing the balance of the little bit of horror, mostly a comedy, taking itself seriously from time to time. You got Rosario Dawson, great job. Danny DeVito, you gotta love Danny DeVito. Owen Wilson. I didn't even know Jared Leto was in this film. Yeah, great cast. I think that's gonna be the main compliment for anybody coming out of this film. There are spots in this film that aren't really that funny, but because the cast is so good, it makes you smile anyway. The mansion this time around definitely feels like creepier. It definitely feels like a lot more dangerous just to walk around and do stuff, and then it haunts them as they leave, so you can't just use the trope of, oh, just leave. Like, they cannot. They are cursed. I like when stories add little things like that. They know what the person is thinking in the back of their head, and they add little asterisks to the plot to make sure, no, they can't. So it does feel like they're taking this film more serious than the last one. The last one definitely feels like a different movie. It's campier, goofier, and has more practical effects. But this one, it's more of a CGI mess. That's not to say the CGI is bad, especially like in the finale. Like, they get a really big ending out of this, like a big grand finale, which I was not expecting. But it does become a CGI fest, and I kind of miss the practical stuff. You have a more real campy movie versus a serious conveyor belt CGI movie, which there are pros and cons to each. So I did like this movie. I don't think it's like a miraculous feat that they were able to accomplish it. It's never going to be like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's, again, just another movie that exists for the sake of it. But I will say they did better than I thought they would. And like I said, the cast is the only reason you would watch this movie. I will say, since having a kid, I'm watching more movies through this like filter of, oh, this would be more fun for kids or not. And I think Chris Stuckman said this too. Like, if this was like one of your first spooky movies, like this would be a really good first spooky movie you show to somebody. That being said, I'm going to give I almost said The Haunted Mansion. It's just Haunted Mansion, guys, okay? It's a different movie. I'm going to give Haunted Mansion a 7 out of 10. So, not quite as good as the park ride. Anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film Each and every day I'm reviewing a different movie from the year 2023, and today I am reviewing Missing. This was a early banger this year. I don't know if you guys noticed, January is suddenly becoming a better year for movies, and we had Missing. This is technically a sequel to the film Searching, which was a couple years ago. It is not a direct sequel, it is just a film in a very similar plot, premise, style as that film. If you're not familiar with these movies, it's basically like a culmination of internet footage that tells a story. And I know that sounds dumb, like, oh, just some FaceTime calls, some Skype calls, a girl searching for stuff on her computer with her camera on all the time for some reason. That's a movie. Yes, it is, and it's actually really great. I think this film's gimmick, as you will, is actually one of the best things about it, because it's a very unique form of storytelling where pacing, editing, finding unique ways to use these different internet tools to get where you want to get. I think that's actually a really creative way of doing things, and it's trying to stitch this story together, finding whatever way it can. You could say it's handicapping itself by doing that, but plenty of times in the past have people been handicapped. But every single movie out there is handicapped by limitations left and right. This is just putting itself in its own box. And I think by doing that, it's much more unique than a lot of other films. If this became a trend and there's just 1,000 of these movies because they're cheap to make, yeah, it would get annoying. It would lose its flavor after a while. But going into this one, I hadn't seen that many films like it before, so that was an added benefit for me. In this movie, we follow this girl named June, whose mother goes on a vacation and basically never comes back, so she has to trace down what happened to her mother and find her because she's missing. Very similar plot to the film Searching, which was about a man trying to find his daughter. It's almost better this time around, though, because she's just a teenager. She's much more vulnerable than a grown-ass man. And I don't want to keep comparing this film to Searching, but I will say, lastly, that this film, the stakes feel higher. Much like that film, you have to like slowly follow the breadcrumb trail. You have to do a big reveal of the villain, and this time around, it felt even bigger, and Searching, for what it was, still felt that way, despite these films are you literally watching a computer screen. That being said, watching a computer screen for almost 2 hours, does it get boring? I will say this movie has its lows, as any movie does. It definitely will have you checking out here and there, but again, you would be surprised what they can do with this format to keep you engaged, and for what they can do, they do a lot. And the main girl, Storm Reed, I believe I pronounced her name correctly, she has to put this movie on her back because she's literally on screen for pretty much the entire duration. As you would expect, it's literally her computer screen, and she loves keeping her camera on for some reason. But every film I've seen her in, even in Euphoria, she kills it. In this film, she kills it. As you would expect, as I just said, she kills it. Well, that's not true. I saw A Wrinkle in Time. She's in that movie. She's not very good at that, but she's also a little kid. But I would recommend this movie to just about anybody. I think it's a movie that just about anybody can watch. That being said, it's not going to be your movie of the year. I don't think I've seen many top 10 lists where this film is even cracked in it. It's not even in mine. But I will say, it was a really good movie. You should always support movies like this, movies that have original scripts and original ideas and styles of storytelling. I always want to support that kind of stuff, so I will give this the full recommendation. I will give Missing a solid 8 out of 10. You guys enjoying the 12 days of film? Do you like my hat? It says, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal."
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
This thing's squeezing my head for I don't know how many days now. Anyways, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and until next time with that, I leave you. Welcome back to the 12 days of film. If you are not familiar with what we're doing here, the first 12 days of January, I'm going to be reviewing a different movie each day. And today we're looking back at Leave the World Behind. It is the 10,000th movie about the world ending because we just have such bleak mindsets nowadays. But I got my pajamas on. I'm comfy. Let's talk about this movie. My wife actually really wanted to watch this one, and I knew nothing about it going in other than, it's a Netflix movie. It's got Julia Roberts, it's got Blade, so it looked promising enough. Went in with an open mind. That being said, to get the synopsis out the way, like I said, it seems to be that the world is a miss. I wouldn't say it's ending quite yet. There are strange things happening. Cell phones not working. Technology not doing things it's supposed to. Strange animals doing bizarre things. Then we follow Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke. They get a nice Airbnb in the middle of nowhere away from the city. And that's when the landlords come around. The landlords being Blade and his daughter. And they're just like, hey, we own the house, so we're just gonna bunk with you guys. And there's immediate tension between the two families. They definitely make it seem like Blade is a bad guy. They constantly are throwing that in your face, and it doesn't lead to much. As I've said with the other reviews in this series, I am going to touch on spoilers. I'm not going to go deep into it. I don't think if you watch this, you would have the whole movie spoiled for you, but I do want to go in depth with certain things I talk about. They are treating it like almost like a horror movie, like a slasher film is about to pop in. That is the creepy vibes that this family is giving off, and they don't do anything with that plot thread. Instead, what we are given is a drip fed of information of what's happening on the outside world. They can't go into the city because Teslas are just slamming into each other. Someone's just hitting randomizers on every piece of technology ever, so you can't count on anything or any little bit of information. And we are slowly told things that contradict each other. It seems like there's a big war somewhere. There's hackers. No one's quite sure what's going on until the end of the film, which doesn't even give a proper resolution. Like, someone just has a good theory as to what's going on. It is like in the middle of the plot, and I'm looking at the timer on the movie like, we got 15 minutes left. What are we gonna do? And that's how it ends. Just a good theory as to what's going on. No resolution. There are characters who are sick and dying. We don't know what happens to them. There's some other characters who are like locked in a cabin, like fending off animals until the animals just run away. That's how that plot thread ends. And then the real meat and potatoes of the story is whether a teenage girl is going to see the finale to Friends. That's what you care most about in this film. And don't get me wrong, I love a good mystery. I was actually very entertained throughout this film because I am constantly guessing. I'm thinking about the film, and therefore I'm caring about things. And they slip in these little character moments. There's like a weird dynamic between Julia Roberts and her husband, and then this new guy comes in. They have like weird chemistry. Again, they don't go anywhere with this. It felt like this was like a mini-series that they just cut it off on, like, it was like a 3-part mini-series, and they just cut it off on the first part. But here's the thing with mysteries. A lot of stories, the finale isn't necessarily essential for the entire journey being great. Like, I can look back at the early seasons of Game of Thrones and be like, those were good, the ending sucked, but as a whole, series was good, even if it fumbled the ending. With mysteries, you are just constantly doing build-up. You are constantly teasing this big finale. So when the finale doesn't hit for a mystery, the whole story just kind of deflates. But I'm not trying to say this is a bad film or it's not worth watching. The cast is actually really great. Like I said, there are good character moments, and the cast obviously carries those moments, and there are moments where you're left thinking and guessing. But by the end of it, the parts I actually remember the most and the parts I care about are the moments where they're just not worrying about the end of the world. They're just living in the moment. And I think that's like one of the core themes of the story, is the outside world is shit, and just, I don't know, stay inside and be a neat. Just binge your DVD collection of Friends and everything will be alright. I'm kidding, obviously, but not entirely. Like I said, if this was like a mini-series, I feel like it really could have turned into something if it actually led to something really cool. I do think there are some stories where you can show or don't tell, or you can leave things up in the open, or leave things to interpretation. I just think this is one of the times it didn't happen. I'm just kind of left scratching in my head, and when I reflect on everything that led up to it, I'm just kind of like, eh. So I'm going to give Leave the World Behind a 6 out of 10. It is a decent movie, but it's definitely not cracking my top 10 or anything this year. I hope you guys had a cozy little Christmas and your New Year's treating you right, and I hope you're enjoying the 12 days of film. I will be here tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and until next time, with that, I leave you. Hello everyone and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. I am reviewing a different movie from 2023, the first 12 days of January, and today's film is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. And I don't mean to laugh, I'm not trying to just smile at the existence of this movie, because I know a lot of people have dumped on this movie. Some people are saying it's DreamWorks' worst movie ever. I don't believe in that. I do think this film is worth watching, but I want to say, watching the trailers for this film, this is one of those trailers just while in the movie theater I saw like 20 times, and every single time it slowly made me want to watch it less and less. The trailers for this movie are terrible, and that doesn't help. Like, if you just look at a random frame from this movie, it looks kind of generic. I'm going to make this comparison a couple times in this video, but it feels like a Nickelodeon TV show. Like, the character designs, the plot for the movie itself does not feel like the next DreamWorks film that followed Puss in Boots 2, like the most praised DreamWorks movie ever. This just kind of feels like a nice little filler movie. Like, I've been to the theaters enough times to kind of know when companies are throwing films out to die. Like, they know it's not gonna succeed no matter what it does. They put it out at the wrong time of year. They put it out with little marketing, and this film checked every box of we don't give a fuck about this movie and we're just gonna let it do its thing. And as you can guess, it did flop, pun intended. But I say all this to remind us that all these things don't really matter. The art speaks for itself. The surrounding little knowledge around it, the little trivia pieces, don't really matter, and I always take that into consideration going in. I went into this with an open mind. The film is about Ruby Gillman, who is a teenage Kraken. The title kind of tells you there. She's more like kind of like a Squidward being, you know? She's just kind of like this like lanky sea creature, and she goes to high school, and people are just kind of like, yeah, Ruby, you know, Squid Girl. I mean, we don't know why she's blue. She's kind of quirky. It's a cheesy movie, and she has little knowledge that her family is from the ocean, and there's this Kraken lineage to which she is a princess heir to, and her mom was this chosen hero, and all the female Krakens can turn into the big monsters that turn down ships, and for some reason the guys are just like the little. And like I said, she's living her normal life. She's thinking of a boy she wants to talk to. She wants to go to prom with him. There's a new girl who she doesn't like. She's talking to her man. She doesn't like that. And then she like goes into the water and becomes a giant Kraken monster. You know how when that happens. So I know everything I just described does not sound like a good movie. It doesn't even sound like a good kids movie. Like, I think if I was 12... or like a 12-year-old girl, I would probably like this movie a lot more. I think they're definitely targeting a demographic that I do not fall into. It is a very kid-friendly movie, but there are little moments I liked. I liked some of the side characters. Her family in particular aren't super interesting, but her dad does like Twitch streams, and there's like some really sweet moments with her mom, and they tease the grandmother being this big bad guy, but then she comes around. She's got an annoying brother, and like I said earlier, it does feel kind of like a sitcom show, and this is like the big TV special. You know how like back in the day they'd have like movies like Jimmy Neutron, they use that to like make the series afterward. It kind of felt like that. They were like trying to introduce you to characters and a world, but didn't have a whole lot of ideas for the plot. And the animation is average at best. I mean, DreamWorks has made a lot of amazing looking films. Even films like How to Train Your Dragon and Kung Fu Panda, and even like the Shrek movies. A lot of these films don't have like character designs or animation styles that I think are like super artistic or beautiful, but they're polished enough and they're fluid enough, and they have such good character moments that like the emotion is so clear that the style isn't like a big factor. They still look like beautiful movies. There's some recent Disney movies that I say it's like a straight to Disney Plus kind of movie. Like, it has smaller budgets, it's not as pretty looking, and this kind of feels like the DreamWorks equivalent of that. And keep in mind, the world of animation, you can do anything, and your plot can do a lot of different things with that, and then somehow they just create a very tropey by the number story where all her friends, they all have like a couple of lines each, and they all follow like the most basics of tropes, like, oh, here's the goth one, here's the one who talks too much, here's the stoner kid. They all just follow the exact same numbers that you've seen 1,000 times. You're not going to remember a single one of their names. There's no performance that stands out. I kind of like their crush character's name. What was his name? Was his name Connor? I like Connor. He's just this kid with a doofy looking afro, but he's not like the generic cool kid. She just likes another kind of goofy dude, and he's not like a bumbling buffoon, or he's not like a super cool dude. He just feels like a normal kid. I kind of appreciated that. I'm just looking at a random screenshot of this film now of Connor and Ruby, and she literally has like gills coming out of the side of her head, and no one seems to wonder about this. She just says she's Canadian. And as funny as that joke is, I think someone has to address this. But anyway, later in the film, the bully character, Chelsea, who's basically them taking a jab at the Little Mermaid, because obviously Krakens are these monstrous creatures in folklore, and mermaids are also monstrous creatures, but in recent memory they've been portrayed as much sweeter, more angelic, beautiful creatures, like in the Little Mermaid. And so basically they gave her red hair. It's basically Ariel if she was a teenage modern girl. And I kind of wish they leaned into like a evil teenage Ariel more. It kind of felt like they just gave her that design for the sake of making fun of her. But the second half of the movie is Ruby and her actually becoming friends because they're underwater sea buddies, and she's nicer than she seems, and they go on little adventures, and then Chelsea's like, hey, you should steal the ultimate weapon of evil for me. And then Ruby's like, okay, my family fought an entire war to protect that, but you're right, you, the teenage girl, should probably have that. It's much better in your hands. This is not a high caliber movie. It's not something that I think adults are going to enjoy nearly as much as kids. But I will say it is a cute movie. It is entertaining throughout. There's not moments where I was just like falling asleep or anything. It kept me engaged. I guess the biggest compliment I have is it's just a cute movie. Like Ruby's a likable little character. You want her to push through and succeed, but it's not going to be a film I'm going to come back to. There's a lot of DreamWorks movies that are just kind of one and done. Like there's classic Disney or Studio Ghibli movies that I'm going to watch throughout the years. And this is going to be one I streamed one time, and now I'm going to forget about it by next year. That being said, I don't regret watching it. I did have a good time with it. I'm going to give Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken a light 7 out of 10. And if you made it this far into the video, or even this far into the 12 weeks of film, I thank you. Your viewership means everything to me, and I hope your new year is going swimmingly. You get it? Because we were never mind. Thank you for watching as always, and until next time, with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. My name is Soul, and I am reviewing 12 different movies from the year 2023. Each movie is a different day, and today's film is Nimona. As the year started dwindling down and I was on maternity leave, I was able to finally start crushing some things from my to-watch list, and Nimona was actually at the top of that list because it's an animated film that I heard a lot of good things about, and in a year where animation was kind of weird, where we had some really strange highs like Sony and Illumination had Spider-Verse and Super Mario Bros. And was killing it, and then the usual juggernauts Disney and DreamWorks did not have that good of years. And where does movies like Nimona, the new Netflix indie darlings, where do they fit into that? Let's find out. We are introduced to a very modern medieval world where they have modern technology, but that's fused with the structure and style and systems of the old medieval days. And they even have knights. Our main character is a knight who is being framed for a tragic injustice and is now on the run from his own kingdom, where he befriends, is forced to hang out with. He meets Nimona. Nimona, the character that the film is named after, wants to be a sidekick to a supervillain because supervillains are also shunned from society like she was. And I think 75% of people coming out of this movie are going to say the same thing as me, which is Nimona is the best thing about this movie. Like, she's not the main character, but she kind of is the movie, and probably the reason why she's named after it, because she's easily the best character. I do think there's a decent selection of people who are going to not like her because she is a very high maintenance character with extreme animation and facial expressions. I think some people aren't going to like her, but if you don't like her, then you just don't like this movie, because that is like one of the main aspects to it. She's basically an anime character with the powers of Beast Boy, where she's a shapeshifter into a variety of different animals. And like I said, she is constantly like a machine gun with jokes. And right when you think that's going to get annoying, they pull her back and they show her vulnerable side. And she has like a deep backstory and a tragic backstory. Like I said before, she is the best part of the movie. A lot of the other characters, even the main guy, aren't all that interesting. And a lot of them will have little facial expressions like Nimona, but when other characters do it, it's just kind of weird. None of the jokes land with the other characters. Like Nimona is like the only actually funny character, and for the most part, everyone else are the straight men bouncing off of her, which is probably the way it should have been. She is the best character of this movie, and probably just one of the best characters introduced this year. The rest of the movie is just pretty good. You know, the animation style, it is very similar to Disney's film Wish this year, where it's a old fairy tale cel shade look, but it's still just CGI. The one thing I do like about it, it doesn't look like 100 other movies I've seen. It doesn't look like every other Pixar movie or the Disney movie, the DreamWorks movie. It does seem to have its own style. And I'm constantly saying this, that animated films should look vastly different to one another, because there's so many different things you can do with animation. And yet so many of these movies just have the exact same styles and the characters look exactly the same. And even something like this is a little bit different, I appreciate a lot. It is kind of a shame that these films like solely exist on places like Netflix. Like I would love to have seen this in the theater. I would love for this film to get a sequel or a series or something other than just where it stands right now. So hopefully in the future. But anyway, I don't have a whole lot to say about this movie because it is simply a fun, goofy kids movie. I don't think I'm going to get a analytical masterpiece out of it or anything, but I can give my short little thoughts on it, which are, it's a lot of fun. Whenever my son gets older and he's able to like sit down and actually watch movies, like I have a giant list of animated films for him to watch, and Nimona is on that list because this is a movie I can see myself watching again, and the kind of movie I want to show other people, you know. And it's simple enough that I think most people going into it would like it. It's just, can you stand like the sheer amount of excitement and goofiness that Nimona herself exhibits? And that's not to say there's not other things going on with the film. The main character, the knight, he's trying to get back with his husband, and that's a whole plot thread. And then there's a evil queen twist thing in there, and the world is actually very interesting. I like the medieval punk aesthetic that it's got going on. Like, the best things movie can do are have me imagining and have me thinking, and this movie certainly captured my imagination and put me in a world I never would have came up with on my own, and introduced me to a character I'm going to think about for a very long time. I'm going to give Nimona a strong 8 out of 10. With that being said, I certainly give this a strong recommendation. I hope you guys are enjoying the 12 Days of Film. I'm going to be reviewing another movie tomorrow. I hope your new year is going well. Thank you, and until next time with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. You can tell I am filming this in January now because I no longer have my Christmas attire. It's been packed away for the season, tragically. But I'm here today to talk about Hypnotic, and this film, oh, this is going to be a doozy. So this film is something of a disaster, and it took me almost an hour into the film to realize that. And trust me, I want to like this film. It's by Robert Rodriguez. He's directed like Spy Kids and Sin City, Alita Battle Angel, which are all films I feel pretty strongly about one way or the other. And as goofy as those are, this is even goofier than those movies. So we got Ben Affleck. He is a detective. Ever since his daughter disappeared, he's taken some time away from the job, and now he's trying to get back into it. And then suddenly he has to battle these hypnotists. And it kind of seems like a cool idea at first, because basically what these hypnotists can do is they skip all the magic and tricks and all that stuff. They just walk right up to you, they tell you to do something, and you do it. They basically just have like a life hack for your brain that makes you do things on command. It actually turns into a pretty cool sequence when you're introduced to this. This guy's robbing a bank and he's telling people one by one where to be, what to do, and it's like he's playing chess but with people, and he's slowly robbing this bank. And it seems like a cool idea at first. I'm into the movie. It definitely is trying to be Inception. The look of this film, the plot, the way it's filmed, even the fucking posters, like this film wants to be Inception so bad. But this movie speed runs horror-bores. This film eats its own tail faster than any property I've ever seen. It takes TV shows years and years, sometimes decades, to get to the level of this film in what it accomplishes in like 2 hours. So basically, immediately, Ben Affleck is special because he has a hypnotist block. You can't manipulate his mind, which is already dumb. And then there are other hypnotists, and when hypnotists battle other hypnotists, it becomes just like a battle of imagination of like, it's like two genjutsu users trying to cast the genjutsu over each other, but without any coolness at all. It's just people staring at each other real hard. And like I've been saying for these reviews, the 12 days of film, they are going to be spoilery, or at least spoiler light. This is a pretty big one though. We find out that Ben Affleck, it doesn't matter, are you gonna watch this film? Hi Bella. We find out that Ben Affleck has been in a genjutsu the entire movie. And when I first found that out, I thought it was like, okay, that's actually a pretty good idea, because there was some stupid stuff going on in this movie. He literally like kills a cop, like just straight up, like in a chase scene. In reality, what's been happening is that Ben Affleck's daughter is like the messiah of all hypnotists. She's like the daughter of two master hypnotists, so she's gonna be like the Jesus Christ of hypnotists, and she is missing. But in reality, Ben Affleck knows where she's at, but he's forced himself to forget, so they're trying to extract that information out of his mind by putting him basically in a mind game like a genjutsu, and just trying to make him go through this literal obstacle course. He's literally playing a fucking little game like in a little warehouse this entire time, because they're just trying to find out where his daughter is. His wife's in on it. It's this whole big plot against him. And if I haven't made the Inception comparison yet, it's literally Inception but in reverse. Instead of trying to plant an idea, they're trying to take one out. They're trying to find out where his daughter is. And when we finally do all this, again, I'm gonna get into pretty big spoilers with this one, because it's just, I can't not talk about it because it's such a big part of the movie. So when they finally find her, everyone goes in and they have a hit team attack this little girl, and all the stakes, all the tension that this film was building up collapses on itself, because we're so worried about this little girl, this vulnerable daughter of Ben Affleck, and when we finally get to her, she is literally Superman. If there was any worry that this entire time this person was in danger, or Ben Affleck was in danger, it all was eliminated the moment they stepped onto this fucking ranch. And there have been other films I reviewed recently where I'm like, it's not great, the script isn't great, but at least the cast is holding it together. Ben Affleck, the best compliment I can say to him in this movie is he's super relatable, because he looks like he's about to fall asleep at any second, just like I am watching this movie. And I'm not going to say this is a terrible movie. It's definitely not like the bottom of the barrel or anything, but it was a film that was pretty choppy in that first hour, and then all the ideas it introduced, all the little clever things it had going on for itself, blew up in its face in this spectacular crescendo of shit. I would say filmmaking wise, like I said, Robert Rodriguez does have a little style, but it is so flavorless and dull. Like if you wash out the colors and have this like really gritty drama, it only works if it's a really hard-hitting piece, and that's not happening in this movie. The average rating for this film on Letterboxd is a 2 out of 5. And that's what I gave it to. That's probably one of the most accurate Letterboxd depictions I've seen. I just want to shout out this one review right here. "Pain keeps the mind awake," a quote from the movie. And that explains how I made it through the movie. I like watching all kinds of movies, so I would say I don't regret watching this film, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people are going to walk away from this saying that they had a good time with it. So go into it with that mindset if you are. If not, then don't worry about it. I'm going to give Hypnotic a 4 out of 10. I hope you guys are still enjoying the 12 days of film. We only have a couple more to get through. And as always, I hope the new year is going swimmingly for you all. I'll see you tomorrow, and until next time with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 days of film. My name is Soul, and I am reviewing 12 different films on 12 different days. And today I am reviewing The Village, not the old M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm talking about a 2023 Japanese Netflix movie that I watched in the dead of night. You have a random sleep schedule, you know how that happens sometimes, and then I found myself watching this movie at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was an experience, let me tell you. This is a dark, very slow burn drama. It felt like I was watching a mini-series at time. It definitely drags, not necessarily in a bad way, but this is a movie you really have to sit down and prepare yourself for. This isn't something you can throw on casually. It's not your Saturday morning cartoon type of movie. We follow a character named Yue who is stuck, figuratively and literally, in his childhood hometown. His father was a criminal who left him and his gambling-addicted mother in a lot of debt. Not only that, the entire village shuns him for what his father has done. So not only is he forced to stay there, he does not enjoy being there in the slightest. He answers to a bunch of loan sharks, his bosses, who have him doing sketchy under-the-counter work that he really shouldn't be doing. And when he's not doing that, he's just doing his shitty day job, day in and day out, until he is miserable. There's also a guy at his work who bullies him, who's going to come into play later. And you are seeing this guy at his lowest low, the darkest dark, one of the most pitiful existences I've seen in a character. But he is pulled out, he is elevated by romance. He falls in love with one of his coworkers, and you can see how this person shines a beacon onto his dark, depressing life, and how that beacon carries him to a much better place. He rises in the ranks at work. He has someone to come home to at the end of the day. He is smiling a lot more. Yue has probably one of the best character arcs in film I've seen this year. Only other one I can think of that can like rival that is like the guy from Godzilla -1. So it's ironic, 2 Japanese films. But yeah, this guy at his lowest low, and you want to see him do better. You want to see him rise up, and you see it. You see him fall in love and have this real connection, this real romance that feels completely genuine. And then we come to a culmination point where it's all on the line, and then you start to see everything that he gained slip through his fingers slowly but surely, and there's nothing he can do about it. He gets into some bloody fist fights. All his shady work that he did comes to light, and the entire town sees him as a shitty person, had a second chance, and now he's blowing it. And I used to think that Japanese film just had like terrible acting because everyone's super over the top and goofy, and their facial expressions are like to the 10th power on terms of how much they're delivering. But I have been proven wrong in the past year, especially with films like this, because the acting in this film is fucking incredible at times. I think there still is tendencies to overdo it, but like, as long as they earn those moments, the moments where, you know, the super tears are coming out or the super anger face, as long as they earn those moments, I'm fine with them. Even down to the final frame of this movie, the final couple minutes really are just a close-up of Yue. And the acting, the cinematography, everything on the final moments is something I'm going to remember about this film for a very long time. It helps because this film looks great. Like, the cinematography on this movie, like, I expected to throw on a cheap random Japanese movie, and what I got was a fucking blockbuster drama. There's also a like metaphorical undertext to this film where in Japanese they have this dance known as no. I am a weeb true and true, and I know almost next to nothing about this ritualistic dance they do, where they dance very slowly with these masks on as to entertain the gods and whatnot, from my understanding at least. And they use this as a huge metaphor for the film. That little subtext, which added to the finale, gave that little bit of a nail on the hammer that, like, oh, I got goosebumps at the end of this movie. And the ending to this film, I really do love, but like when it was happening, it made me upset. Like, you ever walk away from a film upset, like, how could they do this? And then, like, more you think about it, you're like, yeah, that was the, like, artistic ending. That was the ending that, like, probably had the most emotion, but you want UA to succeed. You want things to go well. That's not necessarily what the film was trying to say at the end of the day, and what they said left an impression on me. I have a lot of good things to say about this film. There's not a whole lot bad I have, other than, you know, it is a very slow-paced film. I found myself checking the time a couple times, but if you can watch it in a context like I did, I think you'll really enjoy this film. It's been on my top 10 for the entire year. It's been, like, you know, shifting around a lot, but it has remained in my top 10. If you're trying to get into more Japanese films, I would definitely recommend this one. As someone who's only seen a handful, I definitely am glad I sat down and took time to appreciate it. With all that being said, I'm going to give The Village an 8 out of 10. The first time I watched this movie, I wanted to sit down and give it the main channel video treatment. I really wanted to talk about this movie, but, you know, how videos slip through the cracks sometimes, I wasn't able to. So I'm happy I was able to at least talk about it in a short little review over here on the second channel, but I wouldn't mind seeing the film again, maybe do a bigger look at it, maybe down the line. But I know a lot of the other films in the series are, you know, the big blockbuster movies, so I'm happy I was able to shine a light on this one. But we're coming up to the end of the 12 days of film. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow, and until next time, with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Film. My name is Sol, and I am reviewing a different movie from 2023, the first 12 days of January, and today we're talking about the latest Disney animated feature, Wish, which celebrates 100 years of Disney magic. And if 100 years of history has anything to say, it's that famous quote from The Dark Knight rings true.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Which, by the time I watched this film, I hadn't heard anything about it reception-wise. I know some people have shit on it. Some people do enjoy the movie. I personally knew nothing going in. I just knew it was a musical, which I was excited for. Not a lot of Disney musicals nowadays. And from the trailer, I saw it had its own animated style, with so many Disney Pixar movies looking the exact same way. I was happy to see a new style in the mix. That being said, the animation for this movie kinda sucks. Like, I don't want to rip on it. Like, it's definitely not bad. It's obviously $1 million movie. It's not gonna look bad. But it's cel-shaded 3D, forcing itself to kind of look 2D. If you saw the Chip and Dale movie that was on Disney Plus, the exact same thing going on there. And I kind of hated that movie, but I think it looked better in that movie than it does in Wish, for the most part. Like, that's the tricky thing. There are some moments in this film that look really bad, like just straight out bad. And then there's moments, especially during the musical sections, where it looks crisp. It looks how I want it to look. And another thing I was excited about, this is a musical, but the songs in this just feel very by the numbers. Like, they're not bad songs. Like, if you heard it, like, inside of a Disney store playing, like, it's gonna sound exactly the same as all the other songs. But when you watch the movie, the songs don't reflect the story in the same ways that other Disney movies do. There's songs dedicated to side characters. You don't know who they are. There are songs dedicated to plot elements that are immediately dropped. I've heard that some Disney songs are made before the movie is actually made, and that the film itself kind of has to zigzag around the songs, and I assume that's what happens here, because these songs don't feel like they affect the plot at all, which is kind of the point of a musical. I don't really have anything good or bad to say about the characters of this film. I will say Chris Pine is a good villain. He's like a comically evil, he might as well be like a mustache twirling, I'm the bad guy written on my forehead type of villain, but he's entertaining. He keeps the film alive for the most part. Asha, the main lead, is kind of whatever the plot needs her to be in that moment. She kind of feels like a lot of other Disney princesses combined. Like, when she needs to be adventurous and fun, she's adventurous and fun. And when she needs to be vulnerable, she's vulnerable. And whatever she is in that moment, she doesn't have anything distinct about her. But I don't really have any specific things I can say about Anya. And the rest of the side characters, like, they literally have like 7 friends. She has like 7 friends that are supposed to imitate the 7 dwarves. Probably the worst random slew of characters I've seen in a Disney movie, because they're trying to pinhole them into these older characters, but at the same time trying to cram them into this movie, so at best they get a couple lines of dialogue, but they're not good there either. There's not like super funny dialogue or anything like that. Then she has her animal sidekick character, who is constantly, he is in this movie a lot. And again, he doesn't affect the plot. He's just there to be a quippy sidekick character, and he is not funny. But I do have good things to say about the movie too. I should probably get the premise out the way. So in this enchanted fairy tale town, they have wishes, which are physical embodiments. Like, your wish is able to be handed to this wizard guy. And the wizard guy collects them all, and then once a month he gives someone their wish. And that might sound like an awesome thing, but they turn it into a very bad guy. But he's basically just hoarding them, and eventually is trying to siphon their power and take them for himself. They are able to turn this into a very malicious thing. And when the trailer for this movie popped, it made it seem like he was a bad guy just because he wasn't giving everyone their wishes, which I saw some people being like, is that really so evil? Should everyone have their wish? I didn't like that when I saw that in the trailer, but how it's executed in the movie is actually really interesting. Instead of doing the classic Disney, someone makes your wish come true, you just gotta wish upon it. No. The wish is within your power, and you have to take responsibility for it and make it happen yourself. I like that idea. I think what the initial premise that they had on the script, I think that could have worked for a classic Disney movie. It's just every little decision they made around it boxed this movie into some weird monstrosity, which is complete with, like, there's at least like 100 references in this movie. And I didn't know that going in. I didn't know, I knew 100 years of Disney was happening. I didn't think that this film was affected by it. But yes, there is at least 100 references in this movie, which just blowed up the script. They blowed up random little plot elements. At first I thought they were setting up like a prequel to like the 7 Dwarves and Snow White, and I was like, wait a minute, that's from Cinderella. And then I was like, oh, it's just random references for the sake of it. What results is a pretty just hollow movie, like a movie that felt like it existed for the sake of it. And Disney has a magic formula. They can produce amazing films by sticking to that formula, but for whatever reason, this movie gives such a half attempt that it doesn't even feel like a Disney movie. It feels like an AI-generated Disney movie. It felt like a bad fan film. But the concept, Chris Pine, they saved this film. The rest of it, I could give or take. For the most part, though, like, I'm a sucker for these kinds of films. Like, I eat up the Disney musical magic from my childhood. I'm all about that. But when it's like this, the best I can give Wish is a 6 out of 10. Probably my least favorite Disney film in a long time. That being said, I hope you guys are enjoying the final days of the 12 days of film. I'll see you tomorrow with another movie review, and until next time, with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 12 days of film. We are reaching the end, let me tell you. And today, I want to talk about No Hard Feelings, a comedy film, which I just have to put some respect on that. A comedy film in 2023. They are fewer and farther between nowadays, at least the ones that get theatrical runs. That being said, it did feel like I was back in 2008 watching this film, because this film feels like a lot of different genre comedies like kind of splashed together. It feels like an awkward comedy. It has slapstick humor, a gag comedy, awkward comedy, a little bit of everything in here. But the premise for this film is you have Jennifer Lawrence, who is losing her house, and she's kind of like a trashy, slutty character. She's very similar to her character in Silver Linings Playbook, where, very abrasive, very loud, but, has her tender moments or whatever, very vulnerable at points. But She finds an ad on Craigslist, I think, where she has to date this rich couple's son. They are literally trying to hook up their son because he's such a loser. He's a very nerdy, shy kid, and he amps that up to 11. He is the most shy, nerdy dude I've ever seen in any film. They go on a date. I don't know why this joke sticked with me. They go on a date, and he's like, I'll have a Pepsi. And they're like, we only have Coke products. And he's like, do you want to go? There's actually a really fun, interesting chemistry from Jennifer Lawrence, who's significantly older than this kid. And him being like a Gen Z kid who has no understanding of social cues. And they really hit on some Gen Z jokes in here. Like, she goes to a party at one point, and you know, the typical high school party where everyone's getting drunk, doing drugs, having sex in the back rooms. And she goes to this party, and there's kids playing like the VR set, and they're not doing anything. And the nerdy dude, I like hate to admit it, like I related to him in some aspect because he's like the exact age I was when I lived in a beach town. And my parents weren't rich or anything, but I was in the exact same situation where and you can watch my videos from back then. I am socially inept AF, and you could see that in those videos. And from that time period, I remember trying to hook up with people that were older than me at the time, and I'm a super awkward kid like this one. And yeah, I can relate. And this movie has what I like to call in a lot of comedies that like soft spot. If the comedies can have that soft spot where you actually care about the characters, like you laugh, but like when they break up or they have a fight and you actually care about that, when you actually feel like a emotional attachment to the characters, like when you put on your favorite sitcoms or whatever, and those characters are some of your favorite characters because even though they're just there to make you laugh, when things actually go down, you feel those heartstrings. And I felt that in this movie. And I'm not saying this is like a stellar movie. It's not like laugh out loud the entire time type of funny. There's like maybe a couple jokes that actually really landed, but I want more movies like this. I want more movies I can laugh at. I miss being in a theater full of people who are laughing, even though I watched this on Netflix, but that's besides the point. The point being, I miss films that put a smile on my face with the purpose of putting a smile on my face, and I miss fun, stupid, goofy comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's pretty much what this film is. It doesn't take itself that seriously. And I might be a little generous with this film because I want films like this to succeed. And like I said, I might be generous because it's in a weird, relatable bubble that not a lot of films are ever gonna hit for me. So, but it's been like a month from this film, and I still remember a lot of the jokes pretty clearly. I remember him riding on top of the car. I remember Jennifer Lawrence getting into a fight on the beach. I remember the jokes they had at the doggy kennel. So yeah, I have a little soft spot for this movie. I'm gonna give No Hard Feelings a 8 out of 10. It's not in my top 10. It's actually a little bit under that, but that shows you how much I enjoyed this film. But that's about all I got for this one. We are coming up to the end of the 12 days of film, so if you are still watching, if you're watching these daily, then I super appreciate you. Or maybe you're watching this in the big bulky video on the main channel. Regardless, I appreciate your viewership, and until next time with that, I leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome to the final day of the 12 days of film. I've reviewed 11 other movies leading up to this one, and what I want to talk about is my second favorite film from this year, number one being Across the Spider-Verse, because of course. But I want to talk about that film on another day. Today I want to talk about another film titled Talk to Me. Very rarely is there a horror film banger that slips into my top 10 like this one does. My top 5 even. And even rarer is a film directed by YouTubers that has as much respect as this movie does. It's kind of weird to touch on that real quick. Like, YouTubers are such a part of mainstream culture nowadays, and for a long time there were such separate categories between the entertainment industry and the YouTube community, and now it feels like not just YouTubers but online creators and the entertainment industry is so intermixed nowadays that it's not even worth distinguishing a lot of times, because one is obviously indicative of the other. So often there's so much talent on both sides that they might as well coexist. But side ramble over. This film follows a group of teenagers who are all pretty interconnected. There's a sister and her younger brother and their friends, and they're all really tight. And they go to this party, and someone brings like this mummified like hand. It looks just like this, and it has like all these weird writings on top of it. It's spooky, but it's some dumb shit I could see someone actually doing. And they're like, yeah, if you just grab onto this and say, talk to me, you become possessed. And it actually works. If you actually perform this little ritual, you become possessed. And instead of, throwing this hand into the bottom of the ocean, these dumb teenagers do exactly what dumb teenagers do, and they fuck around until they find out. And it's going to happen sooner or later. Messing with spirits is slowly but surely going to end the wrong way, but it does so in such a smart way. One of the characters, played by Sophie Wilde, is the first film I've seen her in. She was amazing. Like, I almost want to say Oscar, like, not that the Oscars would acknowledge this film. I'd be surprised if they did, but should be Oscar nominated worthy performance here, where she lost her mother and wants to talk to her through these spirits, so it becomes a very real thing when this party game becomes an ulterior motive for her. And this movie does not hold back, and it is so expertly constructed. Like, nothing other than like maybe Jordan Peele films in terms of horror have captured me this way in a very long time. My favorite feeling in these movies is when like I'm looking over my shoulder a little bit more, it's dark and I'm a little anxious. That like anxious feeling. And not only that, you're actually thinking about like, what did this mean in the film? What were they doing with this? What did the character mean when they said this? If you can deliver those two feelings, that anxiousness, but also get like my brain rattling with what the film is trying to say, that is a sweet, sweet mixture. And I was gassing up Sophie Wilde, but the rest of the cast is great too. They're dumb teenagers. Like, I want to get that across, but they feel very real. A lot of the times you make that distinction where you're yelling at them. You're like, why? Get out of the goddamn basement. You're yelling at them in horror movies as you do. But the characters in this film, I actually felt very genuine. And when they make the dumb decisions, as they kind of need to, as long as they get across that feeling of like, oh, well, if I knew this person in real life, they would do that, then it's well deserved. And that helps because like the relationships in this movie feel very messy and real. You meet people who have like weird friendships, and especially in high school, this person's dating this random person, but now they're friends. Like, it's all fucked, right? And that's how it is in this movie. Like, characters have weird dynamics and like weird little social cues that you can pick up on, weird little comments, and those are what make relationships feel real, and this film had that. I also love these films because I love movies where I can like hype it up to a buddy, where I'm like, oh, you gotta watch that movie, or I'm on YouTube watching like the theory videos about it. Like, movies that can do that are like the ones that stick with you. And I want to talk a little bit about like the 12 days of film thing I'm doing here. I purposely am trying to avoid the movies I want to save for bigger videos, or it might be like a big analytical piece down the line. I used to review every movie I watched, and since I'm not really doing that anymore, I was able to kind of take a nice chunk of movies from the year that I watched and talk about them. Films I know I'm probably not going to talk about, but Talk to Me is one, even despite that I'm doing this, I hope I can still talk about down the line, because it is a film that really hit me and a film I do really want to talk about. But I wanted to end the 12 days of film on a bigger note. Just know that films like this deserve more than these shitty little videos I do here. This film deserves a bigger conversation. It's not like a perfect movie. There's a scene where someone's licking someone's toes. Like, that scene did not land. There's a couple of moments in this film that are spotty. I will admit that. But otherwise, it is a almost perfectly executed horror movie. And all the respect to a group of YouTubers who accomplished something I could only dream of doing, making a film as awesome as this. And you expect people to make like a super generic horror film if they're just making it for their first time, but these guys did some pretty crazy, and all the respect to them. I'm gonna give Talk to Me a solid 9 out of 10. Like I said, it's my second favorite film of the year. And I believe that's it. That's all I got for the 12 days of film. I hope you guys enjoyed my little mini review series we did here. If you're watching this on the main channel, I appreciate you watching all the way through. If you're watching these daily on the second channel, I appreciate that as well. I wouldn't mind this being like a fun little tradition I do every year, because I do want to talk about just about everything I experienced, but I also want to have a nuanced conversation, you know, say things that other people haven't said a million times about movies already. But by breaking up into a fun little series like this, I'm able to itch that back, but also doing like a fun format for you guys that hopefully some of you guys enjoyed. Or maybe there's someone out here who just enjoys hearing me talk about movies, and hopefully I satisfied your guys' itch. In the comments, I would love to hear your thoughts about Talk to Me or any of the other 11 movies I've talked about throughout this series. I'm gonna have a little outro at the end of this, but as for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey everybody, I'm closing out the 12 days of film here, and what better way to do that is to actually look at this list that I've been talking about. I rank all my movies. Every single time I watch a movie, I put it like 2020 movies ranked, or and so on and so forth. And this is what I've been working on a little bit here and there for the past year. I watched 35 movies this year, so that's pretty good. That's about my average, I would say. And I want to say that these are like living documents. There have been movies I've moved up and down throughout the years, or I'm always adding other film through it. So this is not going to be like the final result of this movie list. But I will say, this is as it stands at the end of the year. This is what I closed the year out with. And I just want to talk about a lot of them real quick. Already reviewed these. Dungeons and Dragons is probably not fair. I fell asleep during that movie. This isn't even like a real movie, but it was awesome seeing Demon Slayer in theaters. Transformers, already forgot. Aquaman, I saw that a couple weeks ago. I'm already starting to forget about it. Ant-Man, maybe the worst MCU movie. Already talked about these three. Paint, a very weird movie, but it's quirky, so I liked it. Talked about Haunted Mansion. Flash is a movie that just slowly went down my list the more I thought about it. It's a film that gets worse the more you think about it. Shazam, like you notice a lot of the superhero movies that are part of bigger collections I want to talk about in the future. I tried to avoid for the review series because I want these to be their own thing of maybe a future series. But anyway, same thing with Shazam, not a great movie. Ruby Gillman, talked about that one. This is now we're starting to hit the films like I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed The Scream, Asteroid City, Elemental. I like the Marvels, despite what people say. I gave it a strong 7. This is a film I'm a lot of good things to say about it, but a lot of bad. This is a mixed bag right here. Songbirds and Snakes. I actually really like Five Nights at Freddy's. I have a video kind of going over it on the main channel you can check out. Blue Beetle. I actually really like Blue Beetle. I thought it was a lot of fun. No Hard Feelings. Talk about that. Maybe the best live action Disney movie. Little Mermaid. I have a lot of bad things I can say about this movie too. I talked about Missing. Saw 10. Probably the best Saw film in a long time. The Village. Talked about that. I love this movie. Godzilla -1. I really got to watch this one again because I think this is the film that gets better on rewatch. But as it stands, I fucking loved it. I don't think I'm as in love with it as a lot of my friends or other people I know on the internet, but do really like that. Talked about Nimona, Barbie. What a combo, the Barbenheimer. What a phenomenon from this year. Super Mario Bros. This is my top 5. I didn't think Super Mario Bros. Would be on there. Like, I really liked the movie, but I didn't feel like so strong about it that I thought it would be on my top 5. But like I said, kind of a weak year for movies. Like, only these 10 do I like. Not even like these 9 do I feel like, yeah, those were really good movies. Like, this is a light 8, so on and so forth. Guardians 3, I love a good finale. Talk to Me, talk about that. And Spider-Verse, probably staying as my top film of the year. Might rise up to a 10 on rewatch, but we'll see. So yeah, That's what I thought of films from 2023. I still got a lot more I gotta go through. But as it stands, this is my list. Let's see what 2024 gives us, baby. I'll see you then. Thank you, and until next time with that, I leave you.